Look at graphing quadratic functions when given standard form. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to convert to vertex form. And once we have that, we have our vertex, and then we have a y-intercept that we can get right at the beginning here. And that will allow us to graph it pretty fast. And remember, we're going to convert from standard form to vertex form using completing the square. So I'll show you that in a second. But I have here standard form, remember, is ax squared plus bx plus c. And then vertex form is, sometimes it's 1, but if not, there'd be an a here, which would be a number. And x minus h quantity squared plus k, and h and k are going to be your vertex. Remember, if a is greater than 0, and that actually works for both forms, if a is greater than 0, it's positive and the parabola is going to face up. And if a is less than 0, it's negative and the parabola will be upside down or facing down. Okay, let's look at our first example. So it says sketch the graph. Well, first we need to get it into vertex form. Actually, one thing we can do before we even do that, remember our y-intercept in standard form is just our constant right here. So our y-intercept is 0, 3. And the reason why that works is because if you make x 0, then you just can, you make x 0 set, this is really y, so y equals 3. Okay, so we have that. Now let's find our vertex. So to do this, we need to do completing the square, but we can't do completing the square with a 2 in front here. So we're going to actually divide the 2 out, but we're only going to do it to the first 2 numbers. Okay. Now you could do it to the third, but then you have to multiply it out later. I prefer to just keep it outside so that I don't have to deal with it later. Okay, now we take half of, remember, here's how you complete the square, right? Because the object is to write it in a binomial squared. So we take half of negative 4, which is negative 2, and we square that, and we get 4. Okay, so 4 is our number that we're going to add. So we're going to add 4 here. And now really, when I minus this, this is the part that's tricky. Really, it's not actually 4. It's 2 times 4, which will give me negative 8. Or we're going to minus 8 because we added 8 here. So we got to subtract 8 here. Remember, 2 times 4 is 8. Minus 8 will counteract it. Because we don't want to actually change the function. Then we're not doing the problem correctly. Okay, so now we're going to have half of the negative 4 is going to be minus 2. Quantity squared minus 5. All right, so now we have our vertex as well. So we have 2 comma negative 5 is our vertex. And now we can go ahead and graph it. Okay, if we look over here, let's go ahead and kind of set this up. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to have a y-intercept right here at 3 on my y-axis. Then I'm going to go down, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll go one more. Negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And on my x-axis, I'll have 1. I'll just go, I really need the 2 here. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2. Okay, but I know that my y-intercept here is 3, and then I have 2 comma negative 5 is going to be my vertex. Now remember, this is positive, so it's going to face up. And so now you can go ahead and draw your parabola, and you've graphed this quadratic in, well, we solved to get it into vertex form, and that allowed us to graph it. Okay, everything's labeled pretty well here. You can see this is at 2 comma negative 5, and this is at 0 comma 3, so you would be done with this one. All right, now let's look at one that's a little bit more difficult. All right, so here we got one that's negative, so it's actually, we already know it's going to face down. Okay, so we already know that part. We also, as in the last problem, we also know that our y-intercept is 0 comma negative 4. Okay, so now we need to figure out our vertex. And now here's where it'll get a little interesting. Okay, so we have negative 3 x squared, and then because I'm going to divide negative 3 out of here, this is going to be plus 5x plus something here, right? And then I'm going to have minus 4 on the outside. And actually, instead of subtracting here, we're going to add because we have minus here, and then we're going to add this, okay? So Let's figure out what our number is. Well, we got to start by taking half of 5, and then we're going to square that, right? So now we're going to get actually 25 over 4, right? So 25 over 4 would be our number here. And then we're going to have to take that and add it over here. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit difficult, right? We're going to have, if I look at this, I have negative 3 times 25 over 4 would really be negative 3 times 25 over 4 is actually going to be negative 75 over 4. Okay, but I'm going to add it because I'm subtracting it here, so this is going to be 75 divided by 4. Okay, so that one's a little bit tricky, but we'll figure that out later. All right, so now we want to see if we can solve the rest of this. So let's erase here. Okay, now we've done this part. We have our setup, and we just have to do some solving and simplifying, really. Okay, so now we got f of x equals negative 3, and then we got x plus, remember I'm going to have half of that middle term, 5 over 2 quantity squared. And then I got to figure this out. I got negative 16 over 4, because that's equivalent to 4, plus 75 over 4. Okay, so we got 75 minus 16. Let's write this again. We're going to have negative 3x plus 5 over 2 quantity squared. And remember, I'm adding this because it's really negative here. And so, but 75 minus 16 will leave us with plus 59 over 4. Okay, so we'll talk about that number in a second. But the first thing we want to realize is that my vertex now is at negative 5 over 2, comma 59 over 4. Okay, and then I got my y-intercept at 0, comma negative 4. All right, so I've got to figure out how to graph this. And so let's actually move this a little around here because we need some negative numbers. And we got to go up a fair amount. So we're going to go up here. Okay, so my vertex here is negative 5 over 2 and 59 over 4. Well, think about what that number is about. Well, if I take 60 divided by 4, right, that would actually give me 15, right? So what this really is then is 14.75, right? And then here we have negative 2.5. So that kind of helps me see what I'm going to do so I can graph it. So I'm actually going to go then, since this is just really close to 15, I'm just going to go by 5s here. And that will make it much easier. So this is going to be 15, 10, 5, and then I'll have negative 5 here. And I'm going to go ahead and put my y-intercept there. That's going to be right at negative 4, right? So we'll actually label this. That's going to be my y-intercept, and that's going to be at 0, comma negative 4. We'll label our axes, and let's figure out our x values. So I got negative 2.5 here. That's actually the only value I really need to think about, but I'll go ahead and say negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, and then 1, 2, and 3. And now I want to put my vertex here. So I got negative 2.5 and then about 14.75. So like almost at 15. In fact, let's do it just a little bit higher. It's like right almost at 15. Let's go ahead and mark it. This is our vertex, and that's going to be negative 5 over 2, 59 over 4. And so now I can draw my parabola. Remember, it's going to face upside down. We had that from the beginning. We won't need that anymore because now we're going to draw it, and it's going to face upside down. So it's going to go like this and then go through negative 5. So let's try drawing that one more time. Going to go up just like this and then go down through, negative 4, 0, comma negative 4. Okay, so label it f of x, and now you are done sketching the graph of this quadratic.